I stood at the altar in a torn dress, mascara running down my face, while she smirked from the front row. My sister-in-law had just humiliated me in front of 200 guests. But what she didn't know? My husband had been recording everything, and he was about to play it on the big screen. If you've ever dealt with a toxic family member who smiled to your face while stabbing you in the back, hit that like button right now. Trust me, you're going to want to stay until the end of this one, and subscribe, because what happened next changed my life forever. My name is Bryn, and 3 years ago, I met the man I thought I'd spend forever with at a small gallery opening in downtown Portland. Ashton was standing in front of an abstract painting, actually reading the artist's statement, which nobody ever does. He was genuine, thoughtful, and when he smiled at me, I felt something I'd never felt before. Safe. We started dating, fell deeply in love, and after 2 years, he proposed on the same spot where we first met. It was perfect. Everything was perfect. Until I met his sister. Lennox was 26, gorgeous, and had this energy that filled every room she walked into. But underneath all that charm was something else, something cold. From the moment Ashton introduced us, I could feel her sizing me up, like I was a threat she needed to eliminate. See, Lennox had always been Daddy's princess and Ashton's protector growing up. They were close, really close. And the second I came into the picture, I became the enemy. I just didn't realize how far she was willing to go. The first red flag came at our engagement party. We'd rented this beautiful rooftop venue, strung lights everywhere, and I was wearing this white cocktail dress I'd saved up for. Lennox arrived late, made a grand entrance, and within 10 minutes, she was standing next to me with a glass of red wine. We were laughing about something, or at least I thought we were, when suddenly the entire glass spilled down the front of my dress. The stains spread like blood across the fabric, and I just stood there, frozen, while everyone stared. Lennox gasped, covered her mouth, and started apologizing profusely. She even cried, actually cried. Ashton rushed over, defended me, told her to be more careful, but she played the victim so perfectly that by the end of the night, people were comforting her. I went home with a ruined dress and a knot in my stomach, but I told myself it was an accident. I chose to forgive her. That was my first mistake. When we started planning the wedding, Lennox volunteered to help. She said she wanted to bond with me, that we were going to be sisters, and she wanted us to be close. I was naive enough to believe her. But then things started going wrong. My florist appointment got mysteriously canceled 2 days before the deadline, and when I called to reschedule, they said someone claiming to be me had called to cancel. I scrambled to find a replacement. Then family members started making comments, little digs about how I was being controlling, how I was turning into a bridezilla. I wasn't. I was just trying to plan a simple, elegant wedding. But Lennox had been whispering poison in their ears, painting me as the villain in a story I didn't even know I was part of. The worst part? Ashton didn't see it. Every time I tried to tell him what was happening, he'd brush it off with the same line. That's just how Lennox is. She's immature. She'll grow out of it. But she wasn't immature. She was calculated, and I was her target. The morning of my wedding, I woke up with this strange mix of anxiety and hope sitting heavy in my chest. I kept telling myself that today was my day, that nothing could touch me. My bridesmaids were incredible, hyping me up while we got ready, and when I finally slipped into my dress, this gorgeous ivory lace gown with delicate sleeves, I looked in the mirror and actually felt beautiful. For the first time in months, I felt like maybe everything was going to be okay. Then Lennox walked into the bridal suite, and she was wearing white, not off-white, not cream, white. It was practically a wedding gown, this long, flowing dress with a plunging neckline and a train. My maid of honor, Sienna, immediately confronted her, said she couldn't wear that, but Lennox just laughed. She looked right at me and said, "Oh, relax, it's champagne?" "Don't be so insecure, Bryn." My hands started shaking. I wanted to scream at her to throw her out, but I couldn't. I didn't want to be the bride who caused drama, so I said nothing. I swallowed it down and told myself to just get through the day. Walking down that aisle should have been the happiest moment of my life. I could see Ashton at the end, and he was crying, smiling, looking at me like I was the only person in the world. But in the front row, there was Lennox. She was whispering to relatives, smirking, and every few seconds she'd glance at me with this look that made my skin crawl. I tried to focus on Ashton, on the vows we were about to exchange, but my heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Right before the officiant got to the part where he says, "Speak now or forever hold your peace," Lennox stood up. She didn't say anything, but she loudly dropped her phone, and it clattered across the floor. Everyone turned. The entire ceremony stopped. She bent down slowly, made this huge show of picking it up, then fake apologized. "Oops, sorry. I'm just so emotional." But she wasn't sorry. She was performing. And I felt 200 pairs of eyes on me, watching me try to hold myself together. I saw Ashton shoot her this cold look, and then he did something strange. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, and put it back in his pocket. I didn't think much of it then. I just wanted the ceremony to be over. The reception was supposed to be our fresh start. We'd made it through the vows. We were married. But then Lennox grabbed the microphone. She'd insisted on giving a toast even though she wasn't technically in the wedding party, and I'd been too exhausted to fight her on it. She started off sweet, talking about growing up with Ashton, and for a second I thought maybe she was going to be decent. Then her tone shifted. "Honestly," she said, "I never thought he'd settle for someone so ordinary." The room went silent. I felt my stomach drop. She kept going. "Bryn, you're lucky. My brother could have had anyone, literally anyone, but I guess love makes you blind, right?" I stood up without even thinking, tears already streaming down my face, and my voice came out broken when I asked her, "Why do you hate me so much?" She stepped toward me, got right in my face, and said, "Because you're nothing. You don't deserve him." Then she slapped me, hard, across the face, in front of everyone. The room erupted into chaos. People were shouting, my mother was trying to pull me away, and in the middle of it all, Lennox stepped backward, and her heel came down hard on my dress train. I heard the fabric rip, felt it tear away from the bodice, and I just collapsed into the nearest chair. My cheek was burning. My ears were ringing. My beautiful dress was ruined. Guests were filming on their phones, whispering, and I could see the pity in their eyes. I'd never felt so small, so destroyed in my entire life. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and she'd turned it into my worst nightmare. Then Ashton moved. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He walked calmly to the front of the room, and there was something in his expression I'd never seen before. Pure, cold fury. He took the microphone from Lennox's hand, and his voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Lennox, I need you to sit down." She rolled her eyes, tried to laugh it off. "Ashton, come on, I was just playing around." But he interrupted her. "Sit down." The way he said it made everyone freeze. Even Lennox looked uncertain for the first time all night. Ashton pulled out his phone and connected it to the venue's projector screen. My heart was still racing and I didn't understand what was happening. He looked out at the crowd, at his parents, at Lennox, and said, "I've been quiet for too long. But Bryn deserves the truth. Everyone deserves the truth." Then he pressed play. The screen lit up, and suddenly we were watching ring camera footage from our apartment. It was dated 3 weeks earlier, and there was Lennox, looking around to make sure no one was watching, before she took her keys and dragged them across the side of my car. She carved the words "Gold Digger" into the paint, deep and deliberate, then walked away like nothing happened. I'd found the damage the next day and thought it was random vandals. I'd cried about it. Ashton had held me, and the whole time, it was her. But he wasn't done. The screen changed to text message screenshots. Messages between Lennox and Ashton's mother. "You need to talk him out of marrying her," one read. "She's not good enough for our family. If you love him, you'll make him see that." There were dozens of them, months' worth of poison being spread behind my back. I looked over at Ashton's mother and she had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She'd known. Maybe she hadn't participated, but she'd known. Then came an audio recording. Lennox's voice, crystal clear, talking on the phone with a friend. "I'm going to ruin her wedding," she said, laughing. "She'll be so humiliated she'll leave him, and everything will go back to normal. Ashton will realize he made a mistake, and I'll have my brother back." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just sibling jealousy. This was calculated, planned. She'd wanted to destroy me from the beginning. The final piece of evidence was security footage from the bridal boutique. Lennox was there during my final fitting, and when the seamstress left the room, she pulled out a small pair of scissors and cut a tiny tear in the lace near the train. The same spot that had ripped tonight. She'd sabotaged my dress weeks ago, set me up to be humiliated on my wedding day. The room was dead silent. Everyone was staring at Lennox. And for the first time since I'd met her, she had nothing to say. Lennox's face had gone completely white. She looked around the room, searching for someone, anyone, who would defend her, but all she found were horrified stares and phones pointed in her direction. Then she snapped. She started screaming. "You were supposed to choose me! I'm your sister!" Her voice was shrill, desperate, and it echoed through the entire venue. Ashton didn't flinch. He just looked at her with this expression of complete disappointment and said, "And Bryn is my wife. She's my family now. You're toxic, Lennox, and I'm done protecting you from the consequences of your actions." He gestured to security, and 2 men in suits started walking toward her. "Escort her out." Watching her get dragged out of my wedding, screaming and crying, should have felt satisfying. But honestly, I just felt numb, exhausted. Ashton's father, who hadn't said a word all night, stood up and followed her out, shaking his head in disgust. Some of the guests were still filming, and I knew by tomorrow this would be everywhere. But in that moment, I didn't care. I just wanted it to be over. Ashton led me to a private room away from everyone, and the second the door closed, I broke down. He knelt in front of me, took my hands, and said, "I'm so sorry. I should have protected you from day one. I was crying so hard I could barely speak. Why didn't you tell me you were gathering evidence? Why didn't you warn me?" He squeezed my hands tighter. "Because I needed to be sure. I needed proof that even she couldn't deny. I needed everyone to see who she really is, so you'd never have to defend yourself again, so they'd believe you." And in that moment, despite everything, I understood. He'd been protecting me in the only way he knew how. There was a soft knock on the door, and Ashton's mother walked in. Her makeup was ruined from crying, and she looked smaller somehow, broken. She came over to me and said, "Bryn, I'm so sorry. I enabled her for years. I thought she'd grow out of it, that it was just immaturity. But I was wrong. I failed you, and I failed my son. Please forgive me. I was too tired to be angry anymore." I just nodded and said, "I just want peace. That's all I've ever wanted." She hugged me, and for the first time, it felt genuine. When we walked back into the reception, I expected awkward silence, but instead our guests started clapping. They stood up, cheering for us, and the DJ started playing our first dance song. Ashton took my hand and led me to the dance floor. My dress was torn, my makeup was destroyed, and I probably looked like a disaster, but as we swayed together under those lights, I felt something shift inside me. I felt free. For months, I'd been carrying this weight, wondering if I was crazy, if I was overreacting, if I was the problem. But now everyone knew the truth. I wasn't the villain in this story. I never was. 6 months later, Ashton and I moved to a new city and started fresh. Lennox was cut off financially by her parents and blocked from all family events. She tried posting her side of the story on social media, but videos of her slapping me had already gone viral, and the internet wasn't kind. I didn't engage. I didn't need to. I started a blog about surviving toxic in-laws, and it blew up bigger than I ever imagined. People from all over the world reached out, sharing their own stories, thanking me for speaking up. I learned something important through all of this. Silence isn't peace. Standing up for yourself isn't drama, and the people who truly love you will prove it, even when it's hard. Lennox thought she could break me, but all she did was show me how strong I really was. If this story moved you, Drop a comment below and tell me about a time you had to stand up to someone toxic. And subscribe, because trust me, there are more stories like this coming. Thank you for listening to mine. I thought the worst part of my day would be finding gray roots in the mirror. But when Serafina Blackwell decided to turn my simple salon visit into her personal entertainment, she had no idea that the poor little wife she was humiliating had a husband who owned half the city. If you love stories of karma coming full circle, hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you would have done in my situation. You know that moment when you catch your reflection unexpectedly and realize time has been quietly doing its work on you? That's exactly what happened to me on what started as a perfectly ordinary Tuesday morning. I was grading my students' art projects at the kitchen table, sipping my second cup of coffee, when the sunlight streaming through our window hit my face at just the wrong angle. There they were, silver threads weaving through my dark hair like uninvited guests at a party I wasn't ready to host. I'm Indy, by the way. 34 years old, art teacher at Lincoln Elementary, and apparently now the owner of gray roots that seem to have appeared overnight. Standing there in my bathroom mirror, running my fingers through hair that suddenly felt foreign, I couldn't shake this creeping feeling of becoming invisible. Not just to the world, but to myself. When did I stop seeing myself as someone worth investing in? The decision came suddenly, like most acts of rebellion do. I was going to treat myself to something I'd never done before, a real salon experience. Not the $20 chain place I usually went to, but Luxe and Luster, the kind of place I'd driven past 100 times, always wondering what it would feel like to walk through those glass doors. I'd been saving my coffee money for months without really knowing why, and suddenly I knew. This was why. My husband Caspian looked up from his laptop when I announced my plan, his dark eyes crinkling at the corners in that way that still made my heart skip after 8 years of marriage. "You deserve to be spoiled," he said simply, and something in his voice made me believe it might actually be true. He had this way of making everything seem possible, even when I couldn't see it myself. I kissed the top of his head, inhaling that familiar scent of his cologne mixed with morning coffee, before heading out to face my small act of courage. The drive to the salon felt longer than usual, my beat-up Honda making sounds I'd been ignoring for months. As I pulled into the parking lot, I couldn't help but notice how out of place my car looked among the sleek BMWs and Mercedes lined up like expensive jewelry. The building itself was intimidating, all marble and glass, the kind of place that whispered wealth from every surface. For a moment, I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, wondering if I was making a terrible mistake. But then I thought about those silver threads, about how invisible I'd been feeling, about how Caspian's eyes had lit up when I told him I was going to do something just for me. I gathered my courage like armor and walked through those glass doors, not knowing that in the next hour, my entire world would be turned upside down by a woman who thought cruelty was a luxury she could afford. Sometimes the calm before the storm is the most beautiful part of the day. The inside of Luxe and Luster was even more intimidating than I'd imagined. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across white marble floors, so polished I could see my reflection walking beside me. The air smelled expensive, lavender and something else I couldn't name, but knew cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Every surface gleamed, every client looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine, and suddenly my faded jeans and simple sweater felt like a neon sign announcing I didn't belong. My stylist, Raven, was a goddess with platinum hair and kind eyes who made me feel human again. She ran her fingers through my hair with genuine care, discussing highlights and treatments in a voice that didn't judge, didn't pity. For 20 blissful minutes, I almost forgot about feeling out of place. I was just a woman getting her hair done, sipping complimentary champagne from actual crystal, letting myself believe I deserved this small luxury. Then she walked in, and the entire energy of the salon shifted like a record scratch in a movie. Serafina Blackwell, I'd learn her name soon enough, swept through those glass doors like she owned not just the building but everyone in it. Designer everything from head to toe, jewelry that probably cost more than my car, and an aura of entitlement so thick you could choke on it. Her entourage of equally polished women followed behind like planets orbiting a particularly cruel sun. The first comment hit while I was getting my hair washed. "I see they're letting anyone in these days," she said loudly enough for the entire salon to hear, her voice dripping with the kind of venom that comes wrapped in silk. I felt my cheeks burn, tried to sink lower into the chair, but there was nowhere to hide. The other clients turned to look, some smirking, others just grateful the target wasn't them. I told myself to ignore it, to focus on Raven's gentle hands working shampoo through my hair, but Serafina wasn't done with me yet. When I nervously knocked over my coffee cup, the liquid barely splashing my own jeans, she pounced like a predator who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice sugary sweet and absolutely lethal. "Maybe you should stick to great clips. This is a place for women who actually matter in this world." The salon fell silent except for the soft classical music that suddenly felt mocking. I could feel every eye on me, every phone potentially recording my humiliation for entertainment. My hands shook as I tried to clean up the spill, mumbling apologies that only seemed to amuse her more. "Look at that ring," she continued, pointing at my simple wedding band like it was something distasteful. "I've seen better jewelry in vending machines, and that's when I realized this wasn't going to stop. This woman had decided I was her entertainment for the day, and she was just getting started." What happened next still gives me chills when I think about it. Serafina wasn't satisfied with just verbal humiliation. She needed a grand finale. When I finally found the courage to stand up and say, "I have just as much right to be here as you do," her face twisted into something ugly beneath all that expensive makeup. The slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. The sound echoed through the marble salon like a gunshot, sharp and final. My cheek burned, tears springing to my eyes not just from pain but from the complete shock of it all. The entire salon had gone dead silent. Not even the classical music seemed to be playing anymore. Serafina stood there, her hand still raised, looking absolutely triumphant. "Know your place, little girl," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "Some of us were born for luxury, and some of us—" She looked me up and down with disgust. "Well, some of us clearly weren't." I stood there shaking, my hand pressed to my burning cheek, feeling smaller than I'd ever felt in my entire life. Every woman in that salon was staring at me like I was some pathetic creature they'd found on the sidewalk. The staff looked uncomfortable, but no one moved to help me, no one said a word. In that moment, I questioned everything: my worth, my marriage, my place in a world that seemed designed to remind people like me that we didn't belong. That's when my phone rang. Caspian's name lit up the screen, and I almost didn't answer. How could I explain this humiliation to the man who thought I deserved to be spoiled? But his timing was so perfect it felt like fate, and I found myself whispering, "Hello," through tears I was trying desperately to hold back. "Hey, beautiful, how's your spa day going?" His voice was warm, full of love and genuine interest, and it almost broke me completely. I couldn't speak for a moment, couldn't find words that wouldn't shatter this perfect image he had of me being pampered and happy. "Indy?" His tone shifted immediately, that protective edge creeping in that I'd heard maybe twice in our 8 years together. "What's wrong? Can you just pick me up?" I whispered, not caring anymore that Serafina and her cronies were probably recording this pathetic moment for their social media entertainment. "Please?" The silence on the other end lasted exactly 3 heartbeats. When Caspian spoke again, his voice was different, still calm, still controlled, but there was something underneath it that I'd never heard before, something that made the air itself feel dangerous. "What happened, love? And I need you to tell me exactly what happened." Through broken whispers, I told him everything. The mocking, the photos, the slap that still burned on my cheek. When I finished, the silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then came 3 words that would change everything. "Give me 5 minutes." Those 5 minutes felt like an eternity. I stood there in that marble temple to vanity, still holding my burning cheek. Watching Serafina pose for selfies like slapping a stranger was just another Tuesday adventure. She was actually laughing with her friends, reenacting the moment for their amusement, completely oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. Then the salon manager, Delacroix, burst through the back office doors looking like he'd seen a ghost. His face was pale, his hands shaking as he clutched his phone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice cracking with barely contained panic, "I need everyone to stop what they're doing immediately." The blow-dryers fell silent, conversations died mid-sentence, and every pair of eyes turned to this man who looked like his world was ending. "The building has just been purchased," he continued, sweat beading on his forehead despite the salon's perfect climate control. "The new owner has requested that everyone except—" His eyes found mine across the room. "Except Mrs. Moreau, please gather your belongings and exit the premises immediately." The confusion was instant and electric. Serafina's perfectly sculpted face twisted with rage. "Excuse me? Do you know who I am? My family has been coming here for decades. I will not be dismissed by some nobody with delusions of importance." But even as she spoke, I could see the uncertainty creeping into her eyes, the first crack in her armor of absolute confidence. That's when the glass doors opened, and my husband walked in. Caspian looked exactly the same as when I'd kissed him goodbye that morning. Jeans, simple button-down shirt, sneakers that had seen better days. Nothing about his appearance had changed, but everything about the room's energy shifted like the air before lightning strikes. Delacroix practically sprinted to greet him, bowing slightly in a way that made my heart skip beats I didn't understand. "Mr. Moreau," the manager breathed, and I watched as every staff member suddenly stood a little straighter, as recognition dawned on faces throughout the salon. "We had no idea your wife was— I am so deeply sorry for what happened here today." Serafina's mouth fell open, her perfectly applied lipstick making her look like a shocked doll. "That's impossible," she whispered, but her voice had lost all its venom, replaced by something that sounded suspiciously like fear. "He can't be— You can't be—" Caspian's eyes never left mine as he walked across that marble floor like he owned it, which, apparently, he now did. When he reached me, his fingers gently traced the red mark on my cheek, and I saw something flicker in his expression that made the temperature in the room drop several degrees. Only then did he turn to face Serafina, his voice quiet and more terrifying than any shout could ever be. "You put your hands on my wife." The transformation in Serafina was immediate and pathetic. This woman who had spent the last hour treating me like something she'd scraped off her designer shoe was now trembling, her perfectly manicured hands clasped together like she was praying. "Please, I didn't know," she stammered, her voice high and desperate. "If I had known who she was married to, I would never have— I can pay for damages, I can make this right." But Caspian wasn't even looking at her anymore. His focus was entirely on me, his thumb gently stroking the cheek she'd struck, his eyes searching mine with a tenderness that made my heart ache. "Are you okay?" he whispered, and in that moment, surrounded by marble and crystal and the wreckage of someone else's cruelty, I realized something profound. I had never been the problem. Not my clothes, not my car, not my simple wedding ring. None of it had ever been wrong. "Keep your money and your apologies," I said, finding my voice for the first time all day. The words came out stronger than I expected, clearer than I'd felt in years. "What you need is to learn that kindness costs absolutely nothing, and cruelty costs everything." Serafina's face crumpled, but I wasn't finished. "I hope someday you figure out the difference between having worth and being worthwhile." As security escorted Serafina and her entourage out, their designer heels clicking frantically against the marble like they were running from their own shame, something beautiful happened. The salon, emptied of its cruel audience, became exactly what I'd dreamed it would be. Raven approached us with tears in her eyes, apologizing over and over until Caspian gently offered her a position at one of his companies. "Someone with your integrity shouldn't have to work in fear," he said simply. Sitting back in that chair, watching my reflection as Raven finished my hair, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Not just the woman I was, but the woman I'd always been. Worthy of love, deserving of respect, beautiful in ways that had nothing to do with price tags or social status. Those gray roots I'd been so worried about? They looked like silver threads of wisdom now, earned through years of choosing kindness over cruelty, authenticity over pretense. Caspian sat beside me, holding my hand like I was precious cargo, and I finally understood why he'd fallen in love with the art teacher in faded jeans rather than any of the Seraphinas of the world. True class isn't about what you can afford, it's about how you treat people when you think no one important is watching. And real power? Real power is knowing you don't need to prove anything to anyone, especially not to yourself. Sometimes the most beautiful transformations happen not to your hair, but to your soul. They laughed as green tea soaked into my vintage dress, the only thing I had left of my mother. The CEO's daughter smirked like she'd won, but when the man in the $1,000 suit walked over, his voice cut through the room like ice. Apologize to my wife. Now, everything changed. If you love stories of karma and standing up to bullies, smash that like button and subscribe, because this one's unforgettable. My name is Rhiannon Cole, and I'm 26 years old. I work at Vantage Global, one of those luxury hotel empires where everything gleams with gold accents and marble floors, where the champagne costs more than my rent, and where people like me are basically invisible. I'm a junior marketing coordinator, which is a fancy way of saying I'm the girl who brings coffee, fixes PowerPoint slides at midnight, and gets thanked by absolutely no one. I wear secondhand clothes because that's all I can afford. I skip lunch most days, not because I'm trying to lose weight, but because I send half my paycheck home to my father who's been fighting cancer for 2 years now. The hospital bills are crushing us, but I smile through it because what else can I do? Today, I'm wearing something special. It's a lavender vintage dress with delicate lace sleeves, the kind of dress that whispers stories of another era. My mother wore this dress in her wedding photos, back when she was young and hopeful and hadn't yet known that cancer would take her from us too soon. When she died 3 years ago, I kept this dress. It's the only piece of her I have left that still smells faintly like her perfume when I bury my face in the fabric late at night. I know I shouldn't have worn it to work, but today's the charity gala we've been planning for months, and I wanted to feel close to her. I wanted to feel beautiful, just once, even if I'm only here to work. The ballroom is breathtaking tonight. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across the crowd of socialites and business moguls, all dressed in designer gowns and tailored suits that cost more than my car. I'm not a guest, of course. I'm staff. I'm the one with the clipboard, coordinating caterers, making sure the ice sculptures don't melt, ensuring everything runs perfectly so the important people can enjoy themselves. I feel out of place in my mother's dress, but I'm also proud. I did this. I made this event happen, even if no one will ever know my name. I'm standing near the refreshment table, checking my list, when I hear her voice. Tatiana Ashford. The CEO's daughter, 28 years old and dripping in diamonds that probably cost more than my father's entire medical treatment. She's surrounded by her usual crew, Sloane and Bellamy, 2 women who treat cruelty like a competitive sport. I try to make myself smaller, invisible, the way I've learned to do around people like them, but Tatiana sees me. She always sees the people she can hurt. She walks toward me with a cup of matcha latte in her hand, and I swear I see the calculation in her eyes a split second before it happens. She bumps into me, hard enough that it can't be an accident, gentle enough that she can pretend it is. The hot green liquid splashes across my chest, soaking into my mother's dress. I watch in horror as the tea spreads across the lavender fabric, the delicate lace absorbing the stain like it's drinking poison. My hands fly to the dress, trembling, and I can't breathe. I can't breathe because this isn't just a dress. It's my mother. It's all I have left. Tatiana's eyes light up like she's just won something. "Oops," she says, her voice dripping with fake concern that doesn't reach her cold smile. "Maybe next time don't stand where you don't belong." Sloane giggles beside her, a high-pitched sound that makes my skin crawl. "Is that vintage?" she asks, wrinkling her nose. Or just old? Bellamy joins in, leaning closer to inspect the damage. It smells like a thrift store. Girl, this is a charity gala, not a costume party. I feel tears burning behind my eyes, but I refuse to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these people who would feed on my pain like vultures. I clutch the stained fabric in my fists, and all I can see is my mother's face in those wedding photos, young and radiant and full of dreams. Tatiana leans in close enough that I can smell her expensive perfume. "You're nothing here, Rhiannon," she whispers, but loud enough for her friends to hear. "A little worker bee buzzing around, trying so hard to fit in? This dress probably cost what? $50 at Goodwill? Here, let me Venmo you." She pulls out her phone with a theatrical flourish, her manicured nails clicking against the screen, while Sloane and Bellamy howl with laughter. People are starting to stare now. I can feel their eyes on us. Some uncomfortable, some curious. But no one moves to help. No one ever does. My chest feels tight, like someone's wrapped steel bands around my ribs. I hear myself whisper, "This was my mother's," and I hate how small my voice sounds. Tatiana shrugs, examining her perfect nails. Then she had terrible taste, too. The words hit me like a physical blow. Sloane and Bellamy explode into laughter, and something inside me just breaks. I'm about to turn and run, to hide in the bathroom and cry over what's left of my mother's memory, when I hear it. "Is there a problem here?" The voice is deep, calm, controlled, but there's something underneath it that makes the entire room go quiet. The crowd parts like water, and a man walks toward us. He's tall, dressed in a midnight blue suit that probably costs more than everything I own combined, and there's something about the way he moves that makes people step back instinctively. Power. That's what he radiates. Not the loud, flashy kind that Tatiana throws around, but something deeper, something that doesn't need to announce itself. Tatiana's smile falters for just a heartbeat before she recovers, turning on the charm. "Oh, Mr. Dorian." "No problem at all, just a clumsy staff member who needs to be more careful." But her voice has changed. There's uncertainty there now, a crack in her armor. The man doesn't look at her. His eyes are on me, and they're the most intense shade of gray I've ever seen. He looks at the stain spreading across my dress, then at my face, and I see something flicker in his expression. Recognition? Anger? I can't tell. "Clean it," he says quietly, still looking at me. Tatiana laughs, but it sounds nervous now. "Excuse me?" He finally turns to face her, and the temperature in the room seems to drop 10 degrees. "You spilled tea on my wife's dress. I suggest you clean it. Now." Time stops. The entire ballroom goes silent. I hear someone gasp. Tatiana's face drains of all color, her mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. And I can't process what he just said because my brain has completely short-circuited. Wife? His wife. I'm not anyone's wife. I don't even know this man. Tatiana is stammering now, her perfect composure completely shattered. I don't understand, and that's when I realize who he is. Dorian Hale, the Dorian Hale, billionaire CEO of Apex Enterprises, the silent partner who basically owns half of Vantage Global. He's the ghost in the machine, the name whispered in boardrooms, the man nobody ever sees but everyone fears. And he just called me his wife in front of 200 people. His voice cuts through Tatiana's confusion like a knife through silk. "You have 10 seconds to apologize, or I pull every cent of my investment from this company. Your father will know exactly why." I watch Tatiana's hands start to shake. Sloane and Bellamy have already disappeared into the crowd like the cowards they are. I'm sorry," Tatiana chokes out, tears forming in her perfectly made-up eyes. "I didn't know, I swear, Dorian doesn't move. Not to me. To her. Tatiana turns to face me, and I've never seen someone look so small while wearing a $20,000 dress. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Rhiannon. Please. But I don't feel victorious. I don't feel anything except confused and overwhelmed and like I'm drowning in the middle of this crowded ballroom. I finally find my voice and look up at Dorian. I'm not your wife. His gray eyes meet mine, and there's something in them I can't read, something that makes my heart skip a beat. Not yet, he says quietly, but you will be. Before I can respond, before I can even process what's happening, his hand is on the small of my back, guiding me away from the staring crowd, away from Tatiana's tears and the whispers that are already spreading like wildfire. We take a private elevator up to one of the hotel's penthouse suites, and the silence between us is deafening. I'm shaking, from shock, from adrenaline, from the surreal nightmare this night has become. When we enter the suite, he immediately takes off his jacket and drapes it over my shoulders. It smells like expensive cologne and something else, something warm and cedar-like. He brings me a bottle of water, sits down across from me with careful distance, and for the first time I see something almost gentle in his expression. I need a wife, he says simply, like he's discussing a business transaction. Not for love, for business. And then he explains. His company is in the middle of a massive merger with a family-owned European conglomerate, old money that values tradition and stability and the appearance of a solid marriage. He's been searching for someone real, someone who isn't from his world of sharks and social climbers, someone genuine. I've been watching you for weeks, he admits, and it should sound creepy, but somehow it doesn't. I saw you give your lunch to the new intern who forgot hers. I saw you stay until 2 a.m. to fix someone else's presentation mistake. I saw you organize a birthday card for the janitor that everyone else ignores. You're real, Rhiannon. That's rarer than you think in my world. My head is spinning. This can't be real. Things like this don't happen to girls like me. So you just decided to claim me as your wife in front of everyone? He has the decency to look slightly apologetic. I saw an opportunity to help you and hurt someone who deserved it. I took it. There's a pause, and then he continues. But I'm also offering you a choice. A real one. He leans forward, his elbows resting on his knees, and lays it all out. A contract marriage. 1 year, $5 million up front, deposited into my account the day I sign. All of my father's medical bills paid in full, every single one. Past and future. And when it's over, when we've played our parts and the merger is complete, I walk away with a job anywhere I want, a recommendation that could open any door in the world. No emotional strings attached, just public appearances, some charity events, social media posts, a carefully constructed facade for the business world to see. I should say no. Every logical part of my brain is screaming at me to run, to get out of this insane situation while I still can. But then I think about my father, about the collection agency calls that wake me up at 3 a.m, about the way he apologizes for being sick like it's his fault, like he chose this. I think about working 3 more years just to barely make a dent in the debt. I think about the dreams I buried, the art degree I gave up, the gallery I wanted to open, the life I could have had if money wasn't always the weight around my neck, dragging me under. And I think about Tatiana's face tonight, the way she looked at me like I was dirt on her expensive shoes, the way she's looked at me every single day I've worked at that company. Why me? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Dorian's expression softens. Because when she tried to break you in front of all those people, you didn't flinch. You didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't make yourself smaller. You stood there with dignity even when everything in you must have wanted to disappear. That's strength, Rhiannon, real strength. And that's exactly what I need. I look down at my mother's dress, at the stain that's already starting to set into the delicate fabric. I think about what she would tell me if she were here. She'd probably say this is crazy, that I barely know this man, that marriage should be about love. But she'd also tell me that sometimes life gives you impossible choices, and you have to pick the one that gives you a chance to breathe, to survive, to actually live instead of just existing. I take a deep breath that feels like I'm breathing for the first time all night. 1 year, I say, meeting his eyes. And then I'm gone. No matter what. He extends his hand across the space between us. 1 year. When our hands touch, there's a spark, actual electricity that runs up my arm, and I see something flicker in his eyes. Recognition of it, acknowledgement, but neither of us says anything. We just shake on it, and I feel like I've just stepped off a cliff without knowing if there's water below or rocks. The next morning, news of our relationship explodes through the company like a bomb. My phone won't stop buzzing. I've been moved to a new office, a real office with windows and a door and furniture that doesn't look like it came from a storage unit in 1987. I have a senior title now, Senior Director of Strategic Marketing, which is hilarious because I'm only here for appearances, but everyone treats me differently. The same people who looked through me yesterday now smile and say good morning. They hold doors. They ask about my weekend. Tatiana's father forces her to send a company-wide apology email. She writes about unconscious bias and learning experiences, and I delete it without reading past the first line. Sloane and Bellamy avoid me like I'm contagious, crossing to the other side of the hallway when they see me coming. It should feel good, this vindication, but mostly it just feels strange, surreal, like I'm watching someone else's life instead of living my own. The strangest part, though, is Dorian. We start doing the things we're supposed to do, dinners at expensive restaurants where photographers just happen to be nearby, charity events where we hold hands and smile for the cameras, carefully staged photos that his PR team posts with captions about finding unexpected love. It's all performance, a script we're both following. Except late at night, when the cameras are gone and it's just us, something else happens. We talk. Really talk. He tells me about growing up with everything money could buy, but nothing that actually mattered. About boarding schools where he learned to bury his feelings, about a father who measured love in stock portfolios, and a mother who chose pills over her own son. He tells me about the loneliness of having 1,000 acquaintances and not a single friend, about people who only see his bank account, never him. And I tell him about my mother, about holding her hand when she died, about the art degree I abandoned because being practical meant survival, about the gallery I used to dream of opening where I'd showcase unknown artists who just needed someone to believe in them, about feeling invisible for so long that I started to believe I actually was. 3 months in, something shifts. He starts texting me things that have nothing to do with our arrangement, a photo of a sunset from his office, a funny comment someone made in a meeting, asking what I want for dinner not because we have an event, but because he wants to know. I catch myself smiling at my phone like a teenager. We blur the lines between contract and something real, and it terrifies me because this isn't part of the deal. I'm not supposed to care when he comes home late. I'm not supposed to memorize the way he takes his coffee, or the fact that he reads poetry when he can't sleep. Then one morning, 5 months into our arrangement, I find a box outside my bedroom door. Inside is my mother's dress, but it's not ruined anymore. It's been professionally restored, the stain completely gone like it never existed, the lace reinforced and strengthened, even the faint scent of her perfume somehow preserved. There's a note in handwriting I've come to recognize, strong and precise. Some things are worth saving. I sit on the floor holding that dress and cry for the first time in months. Not from sadness, but because someone saw me, really saw me, the broken parts and the scared parts and the parts I thought I had to keep hidden. And he didn't try to fix me. He just gave me back a piece of myself I thought was lost forever. Our 1-year mark approaches faster than I expected. Dorian asks me one night if I'm ready to walk away, to take my money and start over somewhere new like we agreed. And I realize with startling clarity that I don't want to, not because of the money or the security or the life he's given me, but because of him. Because he saw me when I was invisible. Because he gave me back my mother's dress and somehow, without either of us planning it, gave me back myself. What if we didn't fake this anymore? I whisper into the darkness between us. He's quiet for so long I think maybe I've made a terrible mistake. Then he smiles, really smiles, not the polished one he uses for cameras, but something genuine and warm and almost vulnerable. I haven't been faking it for months, he says, and his voice cracks just slightly on the last word. 6 months later, I'm wearing my mother's restored dress at our real wedding. Not the big spectacle his PR team wanted, but something small and intimate, just us and the people who actually matter. My father walks me down the aisle, healthy and smiling, tears streaming down his face because he gets to see this day he thought he'd never live to witness. Tatiana sends a gift with what seems like a genuine apology note. We don't respond, but I don't feel anger anymore, just indifference. She's a chapter that's closed. I found my voice. I found my power. I found a future I didn't know I was allowed to want. Not because a billionaire saved me. That's not how this story works. But because I let myself be seen. Because I took a leap when every safe instinct told me not to. Because I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just becoming the person you were always meant to be. They thought spilling tea on my dress would put me in my place. Instead, it put me exactly where I belonged, standing beside someone who saw my worth when I was too tired to see it myself. Karma isn't always about watching people fall. Sometimes it's about watching yourself rise. If this story moved you, drop a comment telling me what you'd do in my shoes. Would you have taken the deal? Would you have walked away? And hit that subscribe button because everyone deserves to feel seen. Everyone deserves their moment when the world finally recognizes what they've always been worth. See you in the next one.